No.
Hello and welcome to the Londoners News with me, Lydia Young,
And me, Luci Bell.
and we are wishing you a very good afternoon. How are you today, Luce?
I'm very good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm really well. I've got some really good news for you actually, because I know you're a foodie.
Well, tell me more.
Well, today is actually National Pizza Week, so it's margaritas and pepperonis on the menu tonight. I'm so excited. What would you say your favourite is, pizza topping wise?
Well, controversially, I actually like a white pizza with like mushrooms, truffle.
Lovely.
I just can't get enough, but
Yeah.
I do like an olive and a pepperoni too.
I absolutely love rocket, olives, anything pizza. I could eat it every day and never get bored.
Sounds like a dream, Lids.
Yeah. Anyway, let's get started. We've got a fantastic lineup today.
Yes, I'm really excited as well. So today our reporters will walk you through some of today's news and top London stories.
They've truly left no stone unturned.
From the benefits of sport as a mental health outlet and tackling the issues of bike theft in London,
to food waste prevention and struggles within Brixton's nightlife industry.
It's really going to be a jam-packed show today. So first up, Lydia here is covering women's health and the backdate extension of baby loss certificates.
A new voluntary UK government service for baby loss certificates is now available to all parents with no backdate limitation. The certificates are available to those who have experienced loss before 24 weeks gestation or 28 weeks for a loss experienced before October 1992.
I sat down with Sarah, a 38-year-old woman from Dorset who has had her own challenging journey with pregnancy loss. She explains the psychological impact a miscarriage can have and how she would have felt if baby loss certificates were available at the time of her loss.
Unfortunately, I had a missed miscarriage, which is where you don't miscarry. So my body hadn't started naturally miscarrying, and I found out that there was no heartbeat at the 12-week scan when we went in, which was horrible. And then sort of on from that moment, we had multiple miscarriages. It took us a while to get pregnant, and then we would miscarry again, and in the end we had 5 miscarriages. But the first one was so poignant because we'd been trying for so long, and I'd got to 12 weeks and it was all wonderful, and we went in, and then to see the screen, and then they turned the screen off while they were checking things out. I was sent home with a leaflet. I think miscarriage is unfortunately something that's so common, and with common events, I think sometimes it takes a little bit of the empathy away from what is actually happening to an individual, because this huge event is happening to an individual, but the world carries on turning, and having a recognition in black and white in a manner that isn't so mechanic or medical would have really helped, and would have been like an understanding that, like, we've suffered a loss. You don't have anything at the end of it. You lose a part of your future as well at that moment in time.
It could obviously never bring those pregnancies back, those babies back, but how much of a step forward do you think it is for women who will have to experience it now?
I think huge. I really do, because I think it will bring comfort in a time when, you know, you're really going through something traumatic and you're vulnerable, and I think that it will be it is a big step towards recognising trauma.
After hearing Sarah's story, I contacted Scene, a bereavement charity based in Twickenham. I wanted to learn more about the services they offer to women with experiences similar to Sarah's, and ask whether they have observed any impact from the baby loss certificates. Scene shared that approximately 1 in 5 pregnancies end in a miscarriage.
I've been working at Scene for 7.5 years. For the first 4 years I was fundraiser and administrator, and then I took over as director 3.5 years ago. We offer clients support for unplanned pregnancy and pregnancy loss. So pregnancy loss, it looks like ectopic pregnancies, miscarriage, stillbirth, termination. And the pregnancy loss program is a 10-step program that is done with a one-to-one listener. Each week for 10 weeks, a client will see a listener and work through the different feelings and emotions that they may be feeling.
What really stands out to you that is a common feeling or experience that those people have?
Yeah, so the most, I would say it's emotional impact mainly we find, where people come to us feeling either in a low mood, or depressed, even suicidal. And so it's that would be the main criteria that we find that people come to us. It also does impact people from a practical perspective as well. So it may impact their relationships, going to work, socializing. So hope, from doing the program, we definitely see results with clients where they will find that by the time they finish the program, they're able to be able to go out more. Their relationship is better by having a safe space to come and talk about this. It helps with those practical scenarios. This certificate that actually validates it and says it's happened for them, I think is a way for them also to get a part of getting through their loss as well, the journey that they're on.
While baby loss certificates are not a legal document, they serve as a formal recognition of loss. To find out more information or to request a baby loss certificate, visit www.gov.uk/request a baby loss certificate.
Yeah,
thanks for having me.
What an interesting story as well,
Yeah.
to see that the government has found a way of acknowledging the loss and grief held by so many women and families as well. So first up, what impact has this change had on the women and families that you spoke to?
Yeah, so to put things into context, the backdate extension of these baby loss certificates was actually put into place in October 2024. This is just one recommendation out of the 73 that make up the whole pregnancy loss review. The review was pioneered under ex-Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's Conservative government and was published by the Department of Health and Social Care. So previous to this change, the backdate extension, these baby loss certificates were only available to people who had experienced a loss after September 2018. So obviously this excluded a huge group of people who had experienced historical losses before that, who may have actually wanted a certificate for themselves. And it's important to say, as with everything to do with grief and loss, there is no one size that fits all. It's completely down to the individual and how they process their experience. However, through my research and interviews, the response so far from the women and families has been really positive. There is a shared feeling that finally their grief is being recognised as something that they experienced. Maria Caulfield, the Women's Health Minister at the time, who was appointed during Sunak's Conservative government, said, "I read with dismay and sadness about the lack of compassion shown to those who have suffered pre-24-week pregnancy loss and how, in some instances, families were not provided with the emotional support they so desperately needed." So impact-wise, I think it's been pretty huge.
Definitely. And in particular, just listening to Sarah just then, it's an incredibly moving story. And I also think that Sarah's one example of this, and think about how many people it's going to help. I'm just thinking about that, and I think it's a really positive move forward in terms of this particular issue. Why do you think certificates are making such an impact?
Yeah, so it was really moving to speak to her, and I'd love to say that after doing this story, her experience is rare, but unfortunately it's not. As stated in the video, 1 in 5 pregnancies do end in a miscarriage. However, the actual real figures are unknown because they're not reported in a standard way. So, for example, a person's miscarriage does not always go on their medical records. This could be for lots of reasons. But for example, an individual could miscarry before even knowing they were pregnant. Obviously, this is extremely case dependent and everybody should seek their doctor when they need medical advice. But to speak to someone with real experience of a very life-altering event like a miscarriage and hear that a certificate can bring comfort at an incredibly difficult time, when many people have felt unsupported, can only really be a good thing, I think. She also said in our discussion that she has requested certificates for each of her losses, which in my opinion is a really encouraging step for all women with similar stories.
Yeah, and I definitely think it's something that should be an option, and moving forward, acknowledging, you know, a period in their life, a grief, something that happened to them, can help people move on as well.
Yeah.
It's not, you know, if you lose someone later on in life, you know, there's a funeral, there's all those things,
Yeah.
and I think it's important that, I guess, this is a good way of being able to acknowledge that, and maybe not everyone wants it, but it's there.
100%, yeah.
So if people do want these certificates,
Yeah.
how do they access them? Is there a criteria?
Yeah,
How do you go about that?
Yeah, great question. So I will highlight again, like you said, that these specific certificates are for those who have experienced a loss before 24 weeks gestation, or 28 weeks gestation for those experienced before October 1992. The website is very easy to find, as you can see in the last clip. You'll need your NHS number or postcode registered with your GP, the mobile number or email address registered with your GP, and permission from the other parent and their email address if you would like their name on the certificate. Additionally, those applying must be 16 years of age, one of the baby's parents or the surrogate, and live in England.
But, and in terms of women's health in general, do you think that this is progress for, I guess, the overall topic of women's health, and like moving forward, looking to the future? There's a lot of conversations being had at the moment in terms of, you know, endometriosis and all those things come to the forefront of my mind.
Yeah.
How does this particular issue and these certificates progress women's health in general?
Yeah, personally, I do think it's been a massive step forward. However, I do think it's very important, you can't understate that these are optional and it is a completely voluntary service. I think anything that can help a person or their family through a journey of grief can, again, only be a good thing. But as I've said, it's optional and possibly won't help everyone. I can imagine some people's attitudes is that they might not want the reminder yet, but it's a journey for everyone, and they may want it in the future. Sarah mentioned in our interview that some may opt not to request one, but knowing that it's there and having it as an option, as you said, is a comfort that they'll be recognised and their experience will be recognised. As for support, the charity Scene, and the director who I spoke to in the clip is based in Twickenham and can easily be found at www.scene.charity.
Definitely, and I think thank you for coming in and sharing not only Sarah's story, but I'm sure the story of many other women and families who've experienced grief of loss, and now there's a way that they can, you know, that can be acknowledged and move on if they want that, and it's an option for them. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Lydia. So next up, our reporter Danny Mulhern is going to talk us through how support groups are using football to improve mental health.
The UK has been in a mental health crisis for years now, but what are support groups doing to help improve mental health across the UK? Well, many are using sport, or more specifically football, as a vehicle to improve mental health. One of those organisations are Freedom from Torture. I spoke to Harman Sierchich, who runs a football group here at the Arsenal Hub with the organisation.
Partnership between Arsenal and Freedom from Torture started in 2012. I wasn't involved with the group at the time, but I believe that there was an initiative to offer English lessons to our clients at the beginning of this partnership. So the people from Arsenal would come and offer English lessons to our clients, to take them out, to see places, to build up their confidence, and also to teach them more colloquial English. And I think at some point there must be that the idea occurred that they could start a football group as a result of this partnership. So our clients come to this place, which is a safe place for them to start building a relationship, as well as building a trust with people who are involved here, which is so crucial in the process of rehabilitation. It also reported that the clients improve both physical as well as psychological well-being through engaging in the football.
We then went to Toga Social at the O2 to speak to Madeline Harlow from the London FA and Kerry Phillips from Saving Souls FC to see what their organisations are doing for people who are struggling with their mental health.
So the London FA support lots of initiatives to support people that play football or are involved in football and their mental health. So we have a partnership with the Mental Health Vault, which provides lots of resources to help clubs talk about mental health and support people with mental health conditions. We also have the South London Grassroots Mental Health League, which regularly hosts tournaments and competitions for people living with a mental health diagnosis. And we also support lots of mental health teams like Saving Souls, who do really great work allowing young men and young women to come and play football, talk about their mental health and be part of the community. So this is a partnership that came about a few years ago, kind of off the back of a realisation that there isn't enough support within the football world to support people's mental health. There's definitely been a kind of historic culture of toxic masculinity in football, and it's really important to break that barrier down, so yeah, that's how that came about. So we're also linked to a few charities, so on our webpage you can go onto the mental health section and find lots of support charities, whether that be for you or to signpost to people in your team or your club. We've got some really good partnerships with charities that are really important to be able to access, so places like Samaritans, Mind, things like that.
And what different ways can playing football help improve someone's mental health?
So many different ways. For starters, it improves your physical health, which we know then has an impact on your mental health. It's also important for your mental health because it gives you an opportunity to be social, to see people once a week, to have people check in on you, be part of the team is really important. And we actually know that not just for mental health, we know that grassroots football saves the NHS about £340 million a year. So it's hugely important to be a part of football and do something for your health, which in turn can also help your mental health.
Hi, my name is Kerry Phillips and I'm the founder of Saving Souls FC. We are a mental health football team that uses safe spaces to reduce the isolation and loneliness with the prevention of mental health and the improvement of well-being. It was created in 2021 during lockdown. In 2020, I was having conversations with a lot of my friends and I realised that a lot of my male friends were struggling and not actually speaking about it. So what I wanted to do is provide a space where, how do I put us in a room where we're all going to talk and we're all going to play football without actually worrying about it being the whole mental health aspect. So football was obviously the main thing that will bring us together. I wanted to create a space where at first men can play football for free, as I think that for some men football is a safe space, but I also wanted it with the aim of providing a safe space for prevention of mental health and the improvement of well-being. I know for me personally, mental health has been something that I've struggled with, and I know that football is a universal language, so the way to get men to speak was the reason why I created it. So we do quite a few things. So although we're a football team, we're actually a hub as well. So we provide safe spaces through football. We actually have a women's free self-defense class. We've got a men's forum, a women's forum, food bank. We've got a project that we run in Deptford for our young people at the estates, which we're actually playing some Toka Social at the moment, back to school haircuts, and we've actually just launched our women's mental health team, which is sponsored by Octopus Energy, so we're really excited about that.
And what more do you think football clubs and organisations should be doing to improve mental health?
I think it's creating more awareness about it, highlighting it, and providing those spaces for it. Especially in the younger game as well, where there are a lot of young men that are getting released from clubs and not knowing where their next steps are. I feel like there needs to be some form of provision in places within the clubs where, if for example you're struggling with your mental health, and you do get released, that there's a pathway to kind of keep you on. I think Palace do it at the moment, actually. I think Palace were one of the first clubs that provide you a pathway where they continue to help you with 6 months on. So I think more things like that, more initiatives and more spaces within the club that they can feel safe to talk about their mental health and their well-being.
Hi Dan.
Hi.
Thank you so much for joining us on the sofa. That was a really informative video on using football to aid men's mental health and self-defence classes for women. It's an incredibly important topic. So, in the video, Madeline mentioned some other organisations involved with the London FA. Did you speak to any of them?
Yeah, well, I spoke to Danny, the man responsible for the Football Mental Health Alliance. He explained to me what they were doing differently when they were teaching people about mental health.
When if I speak with a lot of counsellors and therapists who are very skilled at the job, a lot of the time they speak in words that I don't understand, that your layperson won't understand. They use lots of long words, lots of syllables, and it can, sometimes turn people away from mental health because they don't understand what's been said. And it goes back to, if you go back to your school days where the teacher might say, right, anyone who doesn't understand, put your hand up. No one put their hand up, did they? Because they don't want to look daft. That's the same with mental health. People don't always understand what's being said by these clinical people, and then they don't ask. And what happens is people are walking away from mental health, and we want people to walk towards mental health. So we're simply using football as a vehicle to educate, support the football community from grassroots right through to professional clubs.
Well, from your video, obviously your interviewees spoke about kind of how football can benefit people's mental health. Can you go into a bit more detail about that?
Yeah, well, according to Arsenal and Freedom from Torture's report on the group, they said the regular sessions report increased or better emotional well-being of the players. So the players were reported to have improved confidence, management of emotions, and happiness. The players were also able to build relationships with one another, bond over their shared hardships, and they each felt valued and respected. One player said, "We have different problems, but we come together, we enjoy the football, and we forget everything. Whether we've had bad news, whether we forget while we're in the session, it's like medicine."
I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, that's such a lovely sentiment.
Just from the sport that I play, I feel like not just football, but kind of any team sport, exercise in general, just really helps me personally. So I resonate with that quite a lot.
Takes your mind off things. It's endorphins doing the exercise. So who else did you speak to from Freedom from Torture?
Well, I also spoke to a member of the group who preferred to remain anonymous. He found the group to be absolutely vital for his life. Freedom from Torture helped him learn English. He got to meet his hero, former Arsenal player Robert Perez.
Oh, wow.
And he also met other survivors through the Freedom from Torture group. He said he feels blessed to have been given an opportunity to be part of the group.
So what if people are struggling with their mental health? Obviously it was discussed in the video, and you've discussed it just then about how sport, not just football, can you've heard from lived experiences about how it can benefit people's health. If people are struggling, what can they do to improve their well-being?
Well, I actually I asked this to a couple of my sources. So Danny, who we see in the first clip on this broadcast, he has a website full of resources for people who are struggling with their mental health problems, especially for those with an interest in football. Within the website, Danny created The Vault, which contains resources with the help of specialist psychologists, coaches, parents, carers, licensed FIFA agents, and ex-pros. It won't diagnose anybody, but it will help you cope with mental health issues, and it will help you show that you're not alone. Also, Kerry from Saving Souls FC told me that he has a piece of advice which he says he gives to everyone, anyone who tells him that they're struggling with mental health problems.
Find a support group, find your place of peace, and I promise you, just speak to somebody, because what I know for a fact that there are friends that are around you that would rather listen to you vent and listen to your problems thousands and thousands of times rather than attend your funeral once. So that will be my advice.
you so much, Dan, for joining us. Information on groups and services like that has the potential to be life-saving. I'll definitely be telling my friends and family.
Yeah, I agree, and it was, interesting to hear from your interviewees, and also some quotes from other people you spoke to. It seems that you've got a really well-rounded kind of insight into sport and mental health, and I think it's a conversation that became quite prevalent in COVID, but I think it's like continuing on, and I think that's really exciting. There's groups like this, and I hope to hear more about it in the future.
Yeah, you can't talk enough about mental health, so thank you.
Of course.
And also, don't forget to follow along on our socials for more stories like this throughout the day. You can find us on X, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube at Londoners News.
Next up, our news reporters Chloe Chenery and Libby Jennings are going to take us through some of the top news stories of the day.
Well, thanks for joining us on the sofa, Chloe and Libby. So run us through some of today's top news stories.
Yeah, so it's great to be here. So first of all, one of the top stories of today is the news that Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has confirmed a ceasefire with Gaza deal, basically to exchange Israeli hostages for Palestinians in Israeli jails. So this will come in place on Sunday after the 15-month war that started on the 7th of October back in 2023. This will effectively pause the war for an initial 6 weeks. So, and then they'll reflect on it and see what comes of it.
So, what has the response been over here in the UK?
So, Prime Minister Keir Starmer said in a statement on Wednesday, after months of devastating bloodshed and countless lives lost, this is the long overdue news that the Israeli and Palestinian people have desperately been waiting for. We should also use this moment to pay tribute to those who won't make it home, including the British people who were murdered by Hamas. We will continue to mourn and remember them. Starmer reaffirmed the UK and our allies' continuous effort to be at the forefront of crucial efforts to secure long-term peace in the Middle East. The news has been welcomed by both British, Palestinian, Israeli and Jewish communities, as calls for government support for the injured and family reunification schemes comes to place.
Well, I definitely think, it is long overdue, like Keir Starmer said, and it's, a positive thing, even though it, obviously at the moment it's only for 6 weeks, but hopefully it's for 6 weeks and then 12 weeks and continues, and that, they can rebuild and, also take some reflection on the last 15 months, like you said. And that's obviously a developing story, so one to keep your eye on and keep following. But what other stories are out there?
So in other news, the murder of the schoolboy Jimmy Mizern has been recalled to prison after shamelessly boasting about his crime. The probation service confirmed. So Jake Fari, convicted in 2009 for killing the 16-year-old boy, was through a glass dish that severed an artery. And was released on licence in June 2023.
Well, that's absolutely devastating. Thoughts go to his family. So since his release, what is known about Fari?
So The Sun has reported that he is now 35 and he also is the masked drill artist 10, whose music allegedly references the murder. A probation service spokesperson expressed sympathy for Jimmy's family, condemning Fari's actions. His mother, Margaret, described the lyrics as absolutely horrendous and called for answers on why they were allowed.
Yeah, well, I definitely think that we should, similar to the previous story, keep an eye on this, and there's hopefully going to be more justice done for his family and Jimmy himself. But moving on now to council tax, what can our audience expect?
Yeah, so a little bit of lighter news compared to the last two stories anyway. So average council tax bills could go up by almost £19 a year to help pay for London's police and fire services, the Mayor Sadiq Khan has announced. He also said draft budget proposes a rise in the share of council tax to £490 for the average household if they're in the Band D bracket. He said, "The last thing I want to do is increase council tax at a time when many household budgets are stretched, but keeping Londoners safe is my top priority as mayor, and I will do everything I can to ensure the Met Police and London Fire Brigade have the funding they need."
So does this rise affect the London boroughs any differently?
So because this is a developing story, it is hard to predict. While the mayor's increase applies across the city, each of the London's 32 boroughs councils still have to announce how much of the share of the council capacity they will be affected by. So only time will tell. So it is a developing story, and audiences should keep an eye out for developments in their borough.
Yeah, definitely a good thing to keep an eye out on. Obviously, it's going to affect people differently and depending on where they live, but a developing story, and hopefully we'll go down again at some point. In terms of Londoners' stories, have you found anything particularly interesting this week?
Yeah, so Merton Council encouraged male allies to join a campaign in their recent stand against domestic violence. So Cabinet Member for Community Safety and Engagement, Edith McCauley, was the driving force behind the borough's initiative to combat domestic abuse and promote awareness in the community. And it's reflected really positively.
And what has the response been like to that?
It was seen as a significant achievement. The collaborations also helped challenge many stereotypes and false misconceptions, such as the belief that only women can be affected by domestic abuse, which obviously we know it's an issue that affects many people, both males and females.
Absolutely, thank you for bringing that one to light. Well, thank you for keeping us updated, guys. To find out more, do check out our Londoner sites. But before that, Libby has our final news story of the day.
Yes, so probably the lightest of the bunch. Lastly, Apple is suspending its AI-generated news summary feature.
Ooh.
So this is following complaints about inaccurate headlines, including a false alert about a BBC story. So the little pop-ups you get on your phone, basically a lot of them have been AI-generated from the Apple News website. So the service wrongly claimed a murder suspect had shot himself and issued other incorrect reports about public figures like Rafael Nadal and Luke Littler. But yeah.
Wow, that's incredible, because that's, again, in a time of massive misinformation, that is not going to help. So it's somewhat positive to know that feature's being taken away. When will the suspension take place?
So audiences will have to keep out for a software update. So basically, with the next software update, they will work on the improvements, and hopefully this will all be sorted. Bit more AI fear-mongering, I suppose, but they're sorting it, so nothing to worry about.
Okay, brilliant. Just make sure you are updating your phones if you're an Apple user, for sure. Well, thank you so much, guys.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Next up, our reporter Lucy here has been investigating the best ways to prevent food waste and reduce its impact on people and the planet.
Newcastle report the highest rates of food waste across the UK. In fact, in London alone, 67% of the food we throw away is still edible to eat. Not to mention that 1.5 million Londoners experience food hunger. So I've been investigating the different ways we can prevent food waste, as well as what to do with our surplus food. First up, I spoke with Jenny Wardill from Runnymede Food Bank in Greater London.
It's actually really hard as a food bank to look at the amount of food waste. There are ways that we engage with local people. There are ways where we provide a cooking course which enables people to learn how to cook well, how to freeze food, how to use it, how to utilise it. We also really encourage local people and local businesses, if they have surplus food, to get in touch to see if it's something we can use. And also we do engage with other local surplus food organisations like Fair Share and Neighbourly, where we're able to collect the surplus food, and that will come to our local food banks. And most of the time, they are actually really good produce, and that helps sort of us as a food bank to be able to give it out to local people, and is also helping with the problem with food waste. If businesses are finding that they're wasting considerable amounts of food, I would say get in touch with us, call us up, just to see if there's anything we can use here. Also, I think just local people and people in their homes, I think it's just good to consider how much we're buying. Maybe buy smaller amounts and shop maybe twice a week, so food isn't wasted as much. Utilise the freezer, cook big amounts of food and freeze it, and then you've got extra meals. I think it's hard for all of us when we're considering food waste, but it's just finding ways you can use it really.
Runnymede Food Bank gave out 4,164 food parcels last year, which fed 9,421 people, and unfortunately this is increasing. But how do smaller food banks, hostels and community kitchens across London get the food that they need on time?
City Harvest is a food redistribution charity founded in 2014 with the aim of redistributing good food to people that need it the most. Our aim is to provide healthy, nourishing food to those in need in London and to prevent that food from going to waste. There are some really alarming stats out there at the moment. The one that keeps ringing in my head is the fact that there's more food banks than McDonald's branches in the UK, and 1/3 of food in the UK is currently not being used. So we're trying to work with businesses on the food waste triangle to, if they're disposing of food, can we bring that up to it being used for human consumption? Obviously, prevention is the best way forward, but us, alongside other food redistribution charities, are the next line and the next priority. In what we do, alongside other food redistribution charities, we are preventing food waste. It's pretty damning when you hear people's stories of how much food they've had to throw away for various reasons, and we are just so pleased to be able to help and put their food to good use. There's still a lot of food waste occurring, edible, and we are trying to map that out, is find out who people are working with. If you already have a food redistribution charity connection, brilliant, congratulations, you're doing the very best you can with the edible food waste. If you don't have a partner, hello, we're here, please come and talk to us. We have an ever-growing demand and we want to make it easy for you to donate your goods. We're here to help.
City Harvest work with over 375 groups who are serving roughly 120,000 people a week. In any given year, the food that they supply is worth tens of thousands of pounds, which helps the organisations they work with spend money on other projects. But how can businesses tackle their food waste, reduce their costs and widen their customer base?
So Too Good To Go is a social impact company, and our main mission is to inspire and empower everyone to fight food waste. So you may know us best for our marketplace app. Through that you can buy surplus food from all different types of retailers in a bid to try and tackle food waste. So I think there's 3 key reasons why people should care about food waste. First and foremost, obviously, it is having an impact on our planet. So environmentally, food waste costs the earth. We've seen that in the fact that 10% of greenhouse gases is because of food waste. Secondly, it costs people. It costs businesses and it costs consumers as well. And 70% of waste is happening at a household level, and that's costing people. And when we're still in a cost of living crisis, inflation, yes, it's weaning, but it's still there, then it can save money for people as well. And then I think finally, ethically and morally, it feels very wrong to be throwing away food when there are so many people in need. I think the latest stat is around 830 million of people are hungry every day across the globe. And so we have, I think, a duty to try and solve that problem and stop food going in the bin. So I think it depends on what reason resonates with you most, but environmentally, financially, and then ethically and socially, it is wrong. And then one final point is we have to also educate the younger generations, and so that's an area we're really passionate about. Is how do we get food waste on the school curriculum so that actually the future generations understand also this this problem, and have a bit of mentality that I think, you know, the World War generation had. I think back to my granny, and she would repurpose meals again and again. You know, we've eaten the same thing 3 times, but that's because there was that, you know, respect for food when you don't have it there. And that's what I think we need to try and get back.
As we've seen, there's many different ways that we can prevent our food waste, from shopping littered and often and donating our surplus food to investing in new technology. However, there's still a long way to go, and with a lot on the line for people and planet, we must all do our part to prevent further food waste from taking place.
So I'm delighted to be joined by Lucy. What a treat it is to have you this side of the sofa.
Thanks for having me.
Those statistics were really shocking. More food banks than McDonald's branches is crazy. So tell us a little bit more about food waste across London and the UK.
Yeah, so like you mentioned, that particular stat was quite shocking when Ben told me about that. But more generally, according to the Felix Project, the UK wastes almost 10 billion tons of food annually. Sorry, I was a bit of a tongue twister. For a Friday afternoon, and almost 2 billion tonnes of this waste comes from the food industry, according to the Felix Project as well. And there's also a lot of confusion over use by and sell by dates, so I don't know if you feel like that, but it is quite confusing. I
just take a wild guess. I'm like, it smells fine, I'm going to eat it.
Cities as well, such as London and Newcastle, are large contributors of food waste. According to data from Eat Like a Londoner, 67% of the food that Londoners throw away is actually still edible. But I do think it's important to note here that cities are highly populated, densely populated areas. So naturally more food waste will occur. There's more people in a place, there's more food waste.
Of course, yeah.
And Londoners, like other, you know, people who live in other cities, live busy lives. And we're also used to just having food available all the time. Yeah. So, you know, with it being so accessible, I feel like people now have sort of lost that connection. And Sophie touched on it right at the end there. People sort of don't have that respect and appreciation for it because it's so readily available.
Yeah, it's a massive privilege to have such easy access to not only a lot of food, but different types of food.
Yeah.
You know, you go on Just Eat and there's like 1,000 different restaurants nearby, but it's a double-edged sword, really.
Yeah, so it's definitely safe to say that this issue is growing. And there's a range of impacts and consequences that it has, for sure.
So you mentioned that the issue's growing. What impact is it having on people and the planet?
Yeah, so it has kind of several facets to this answer, which is environmentally, food waste is costing the planet. Producing food requires significant natural resources, including land, water, and energy. According to the Felix Project, on a global scale, the food system generates between 25 to 30% of total greenhouse gas emissions.
Wow.
And for every tonne of food waste end up in landfill, it produces approximately 4.2 tonnes of greenhouse gases. So it significantly affects the environment. Financially, it also costs homes and businesses a lot of money. The average British household wastes up to £720 a year, according to Eat Like a Londoner, on the food that they throw away. Both the hospitality industry and food businesses, as margins are tighter than ever with cost of living, you know, throwing away good food is a waste of money. They're wasting money and stock. I do think it's important to mention here that actually, despite living in one of the richest countries in the world, the UK, 8.4 million of people across the UK are struggling to eat. And in London specifically, 1.5 million adult Londoners experience food hunger, according to the Felix Project. So there's a lot of food waste and it's impacting the environment badly. But there's also people who, you know, need the food. So I do think that there's, you know, like you said, a double-edged sword here where it's impacting the environment. So we want to reduce that. And there's a lot of people who need it. And that's kind of why I spoke to the range of people I did, because there's lots of ways of kind of tackling this issue. But however, despite these data from London Recycles shows that 4.7 million tonnes of edible food is still thrown away. So with so many people struggling to eat, it just feels wrong that all this food is being thrown away.
Yeah.
So there's stats on either side, whether it's environmental, it's financially or a business, if you're at home you're trying to save money, or if you need food and there's people throwing it away, then it's completely fine, it's edible to eat. Whatever resonates with you, it's having an impact kind of every corner of the kind of food chain and food cycle, really.
Yeah, you've highlighted a really like key issue there, in that a lot is being wasted, yet a lot of people need that food.
Yeah.
And in a first world country, it is shocking to hear that there is hunger happening, and definitely could be delegated a lot better. So according to London Recycles, 60% of food waste comes from the home. What is your advice for those who want to reduce their food and have excess food and don't know what to do with it?
It's a good question. And as some of my interviewees mentioned, there are many ways you can reduce your food waste at home. Some of the tips and tricks that I kind of got from the interviews I had was shopping little and often, using the freezer, writing lists, making use of leftovers and batch cooking, for example. Those are all really great ways of, like, you know, keeping an eye on the food that you're buying and the money that you're spending. I think it's important to also just be mindful. I think it's kind of easy when you're in the shop, especially if you might go when you're hungry and just pick up things.
Yeah.
Me and my family, we create like a meal plan for each week. Obviously there's things you can put in the cupboard, like tin products are great. But I do think it's just about being mindful. A good analogy actually that one of my interviewees gave me was, you know, when you're at a buffet, you can go back for more, like there's endless amounts of food, yet people will still like pile up their plate. And I think it's just about changing your mindset. Like, you can go back, you can get more. So yeah, I also think that's important. But if people do have excess food and they won't use it, I definitely think donation or giving it to a food bank or a redistribution network is a good way of, you know, using that, you know, and preventing that from going to waste and also helping people out. Most councils as well across London might have a food waste recycling service. You can get a caddy that's specifically for food waste. So
I have one of those.
Yeah, so do I. So it's having less effect on the environment. Because according to London Recycles, if food waste does end up in landfill, it rots and releases methane, which is a greenhouse gas 25 times more potent than carbon dioxide. So it depends what reason resonates with you.
Absolutely,
but there are ways to do it. It's just about putting in that little bit more effort to reduce the waste.
Just a bit of time, planning, and I'm sure that if anybody hears that less food waste could save them money in a time of the cost of living crisis, then it can only be received well, hopefully. So looking to the future then, how can technology and the rise of AI be used in relation to food waste prevention?
Really, really good question, because I was kind of thinking about this when I was initially investigating the topic. And I spoke with James Bell, a business development manager at Winnow, which is a business aimed at reducing commercial kitchen food waste by the use of AI technology. So here's what he had to say.
The technology actually does. So it's normally sitting in a kitchen. Basically what it is, it's a digital scale. On top of that, you position the bin that is used in the kitchen every day, and connected to the scale, there's a camera device. So when anyone throws the food away in the kitchen, the scale records the weight and the camera will take a picture every single time. We then have an AI model, which utilizes real-time image recognition technology, which automatically categorizes that type of food item that's thrown away. So that allows us to basically monitor all of the food throughout the day in the kitchen, understanding what food items it is and also where the waste is coming from.
So, you know, as we heard from James there, that's how they use AI in commercial kitchens, through, you know, the use of the AI technology, looking over the bin and kind of using that to calculate how much waste is going in there and how much, I guess, they're wasting there, how much money is kind of they're throwing away, basically. But all these insights provided by AI technology allows the commercial kitchens to make better purchasing decisions, provide the same service with less food, and also just thereby reduce the amount of food waste and cost for the business. So today, Winnow works with close to 3,000 kitchens. On a yearly basis, they save around 50 million meals, which is basically a meal every second. Monetary-wise, this equates to around $70 million that they save for their customers. And they reduce around 87,000 tonnes of CO2 emissions annually. So I think their impact...
They're doing a good job.
They're doing a good job, for sure. But I do think it's important to mention some of the other benefits of their technology. So financially, it will help cut food costs when margins are tight for the food industry. Environmentally, it also helps deal with pressure from perhaps eco-conscious businesses and customers, as well as food waste regulators. And, you know, for a business's reputation, now you can go onto any website for a business, and having sustainability credentials will be one of some things that people look for the most.
Absolutely, yeah.
So they can get a lot of traction by investing in sustainable initiatives such as this one. Personally, I do think that AI is the future of kind of food waste prevention from a commercial lens. as it's only just begun and it's having such a big impact. And what it's kind of taken what was once quite a laborious process and has automated it and made it a lot more accurate and a lot more efficient and providing extremely accurate data. But I do think, on a final point, that perhaps for kitchens that don't have access to this technology, and for homes, obviously this is a commercial product at the moment, other ways you can, reduce your food waste for perhaps a smaller business size is just reducing a range of portion sizes. You go to the pub and you have a gigantic fish and chips you're never going to finish. I think having a small, medium, large option, understanding customer preferences, understanding popular items, that can be used by businesses who don't have this technology or can't afford it just yet. And as we mentioned earlier, there's several ways that you can prevent food waste in the home as well. And there's lots of different websites that I looked onto when I was looking at food waste, whether that's Eat Like a Londoner, the Felix Project. They all have really good advice, tips and tricks for reducing food waste. So my advice would be for people in the home to go on those websites and have a look.
Do your research. Well, it's absolutely incredible that Winner have managed to innovate pretty much putting things in the bin. So that is a very smart mind, and I am really happy to hear that's happening in businesses around the UK, was it? Yeah. So thank you very much for joining us, Lucy. Next, we hear from Libby Jennings about how Brixton businesses are dealing with changing habits in nightlife audiences.
Nightlife is changing at an alarming rate. New data from the Home Office shows that 2/3 of 24-hour venues have closed since 2022. Brixton is one of those communities trying to change the narrative and bring back its after-hours crowd. I spoke to multiple people and businesses about what can be done to solve this.
The Brixton Business Improvement District is an organization that is fully funded and led by local businesses. We represent around 560, 570 paying members. So we cover different aspects to anything to do with Brixton. So anything to do with safety, cleaning, marketing, events. But obviously our nighttime economy plays a major part in the work that we do. So we have different initiatives. So for example, we have the nighttime forum where our venues meet on regular basis. And we also run a nighttime briefing. So every other Friday, our venues actually met with ourselves, but also representatives from the Met Police and the licensing team from Lambeth Council to ensure that anything that is relevant to know about any issues, whether it's safety, licensing, or any kind of big events, are being covered. Brixton nightlife has been going through some challenging times, some major national trends that obviously are affecting the industry as a whole. We have to almost think that COVID is being part of that, but is not any longer the key reason why the nighttime economy is being negatively affected. I think there's been a major cost of living crisis that everybody's obviously been affected by, which also implies a cost of trading crisis, with a lot of the running costs for businesses being pushed up, obviously. Time spent together socializing has changed, so there is a stronger focus on the food offers instead of drinks offered, basically. People are after more experiential time with the friends, so there's been a number of trends, if you like, that are going on probably at global level, national level. One of the role that we want to play as an organization that is representing Brixton and working with the Brixton venues is to very much coordinating the wider destination as a place. So we care about obviously people coming to Brixton and having a good time, and is to ensure that all our venues and operators have access to information. For us, it's very important that the nighttime economy is celebrated and supported at a time of challenges.
I guess a lot of people have a bad opinion on Brixton. I mean, I remember back in the day it used to be pretty wild, to say the least. I'm not saying that everything's gone now. I think you still have a little bit of crime that needs to be dealt with regarding pickpocketing and stuff like that. It's still quite rife in Brixton. I know the police are dealing with that. They know what's going on, and that's probably one of the bigger issues. that Brixton needs. Other than that, people need to come here in Brixton and feel safe and know they're going to have a good time. They're not going to be harassed. Daytime is more local people doing their shopping, stopping off for a coffee, meeting up with friends. So it's a little bit different. Whereas nighttime is people literally come to Brixton to enjoy the culture, the vibe that Brixton has. It's very unique, a very special place. Probably for me, the best place in the whole of London and the UK. Nighttime, you know, you've got the Brixton Academy here, which is open, you know. That was another downturn for the local economy in Brixton being closed. Then we have the war in Ukraine, which is probably, I think, probably the worst thing that's happened. Because Brexit didn't really affect people as like the nighttime or the daytime economy, because it wasn't really affecting their pockets. COVID was another story, but with the war became, when the sanctions were in place, which caused all the energy, everything just went skyrocketing.
John, Luca and Mario have highlighted the challenges and changes facing Brixton nightlife. Let's now hear from Ellie Foster from the Satay Bar, who is navigating these pressures firsthand.
We are what you call old school Brixton, in the sense that we have been here longer than gentrification has been a thing in Brixton. A lot of our clientele are what we call legacy customers. We're very lucky to have those legacy clients because, if you will see, going up and down this road currently, there's quite a lot of empty spaces for restaurants and bars which have turned up in recent years and closed already because the climate is quite harsh for the hospitality business in general.
You mentioned before the gentrification of Brixton. How have you seen that evolve over the last few years?
I would say that it started maybe 10, 15 years ago. There was a whole period where it was quite exciting because there was lots of new people coming to Brixton, an opportunity to sell our products to different people. But then, of course, that brought along higher rents and pushed lots of people out. So that was very difficult for a long time. And then, like all bubbles, it burst. It burst first of all through COVID, and then I think later in recent years because people's habits have changed somewhat. The cost of living crisis has meant that there's not enough spare cash to be going out of an evening all the time. The fact that the food that we buy in order to create our great dishes and sell is now so expensive that we have had to raise prices somewhat, and that makes it quite unaffordable for quite a lot of people, I think.
I think the government has been at fault for harming hospitality and not understanding who we employ and how many people are employed in the industry. So a restaurant going down, or locally where there's been a lot of restaurants and bars very recently going down, means that it's not just a business. These are local people who no longer have jobs. There's bringing instability to the high street itself. Many closures mean that it feels more negative. People aren't as happy in the space that they live and work in. So why hospitality pays VAT at such an excessive degree when you're consuming things, you're not keeping them. So essentially all our profits are simply going to the government.
So what can they do? Well, personally, whilst I agree with all the new legislation that the government are going to bring in regarding minimum wage, etc., I think there are certainly bigger companies and bigger fish to fry where they could gain a lot of extra taxation rather than the burden being placed on smaller independent business.
So, fresh from the streets of Brixton, Libby joins us now on the sofa. It's great to have you here, our very own nightlife correspondent.
Yeah, I'm glad to be back.
So, there's mention of governmental support needed for the nighttime industry to thrive. What role do they currently have then?
Yeah, so although she is recently resigned as of last October, London's first night czar, Amy LeMay, she held her role between 2016 to 2023. She was instrumental in navigating challenges within the city's nightlife scene. Her position created to champion the interests of nightlife workers, venues, and the industry as a whole, really. This allowed her to address key issues like venue protection, such as Brixton Academy, safety, and inclusion. During her time, she worked on initiatives like Women's Night Safety Charter and developed the nighttime enterprise zones to revitalise the high streets. Amazing. However, all this work, she does have some controversies around her. The nightlife economy faced significant challenges during her time, especially during the pandemic, as did many other industries at the time. And more recently, the announcement of 24-hour venues across the capital closing by 2/3, dropping, according to the Home Office data. Despite some controversy over her wage, which increased to £132,800 roughly last May, and her overall effectiveness. Many in the industry, despite this, including those at Brixton Bid, praised her collaborative approach, emphasizing her efforts to alleviate the industry's visibility and address pressing issues within Brixton and beyond. As she passes her torch on, she said, "Despite the ongoing challenges that the nightlife industry faces, I know that London's life at night will continue to evolve."
And I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I think post-COVID, like, no one really goes out as much anymore.
It is
so
definitely
expensive.
Quieter when you go out now from what I remember it used to be.
When you were just talking there, you mentioned the Women's Night Safety Charter. How has Brixton specifically been dealing with violence against women and girls?
Yeah, so obviously violence against women and girls is a nationwide issue, but safety concerns, particularly violence against women and girls, that is, have become a pressing issue within the nightlife industry, particularly rather than daytime. I mean, before the new year, the National Police Chiefs Council recently declared this issue a national emergency, citing a 37% increase in cases over the last 5 years. Brixton in particular has felt the urgency given its proximity to high-profile cases such as Sarah Everhard's. I actually spoke to John Luger about this, and he and Brixton Bid are firm advocates in trying to solve this issue specifically in Brixton. He explained how he was invited to a panel talk with Amy May, the night czar, to open up the conversation between men needing to get involved and the need for more education and behavioural change, as well as Brixton Bid themselves providing women's night safety training. They also do cultural efforts. So, for example, Brixton Bid is taking practical steps to ensure everyone's safety. They've applied for Lambeth Council's Community Connections Fund to launch a safe night bus for Brixton. This dedicated nighttime hub would operate on busier nights, staffed by security and medical professionals, providing crucial support to visitors, workers, and residents all around Brixton. This initiative mirrors successful projects in other cities such as Bath, where safe night buses have already shown significant positive impact on local economies. So it looks like it will work in Brixton, hopefully. Through these combined efforts, alongside Brixton Bid's dedication to their Safer Day and Night scheme through investing 27% of their £2.5 million budget over the next 5 years, Brixton aims to create a safer and more welcoming nightlife environment, encouraging more people to feel comfortable with going out in Brixton for a night out or even just to visit the borough as a whole.
Absolutely. I know if I was going out and I knew there was a safety bus, that would make me feel 1000% better.
I might actually go, I could probably go out instead of not.
100%. And it's incredibly scary for women and girls to have to go out at night. It's just the reality, and knowing that that's there, I can't imagine the change that's making.
Yeah,
so that's really, really hopeful to hear. How are other nighttime venues across Brixton and London faring with the ongoing changes in habits and people maybe not going out as much anymore?
Yeah, so we briefly heard from Hamlet from the courtesan section in my interview, and he emphasised the need for government support to elevate hospitality as a respected profession. He asked what you do if you have, what do you have to do to get a job in hospitality here? Essentially, you just kind of get a trial shift, and then if you like you, maybe based on personality more so than anything, they hire you and maybe give you a little bit of training, but not too much. He highlighted how countries with robust training systems create passionate, skilled workers, contrasting this with the UK's reliance on these trial shifts I mentioned. Hamnet also shared the need for uniqueness in the industry, or as some would say, a bit of a gimmick. So despite this, he admitted that even though his unique cabaret and dim sum themed bar struggles, citing marketing as a major hurdle. Meanwhile, other people that I spoke to Dimitri from the One Bar, which is near Finsbury, so outside of Brixton, obviously. They offer a more optimistic outlook on the nightlife industry and how to get people in its doors. So the One Bar has only recently opened. It opened up around September time, so new venue. But Dimitri has previously got 16 years of experience and envisioned redefining nightlife through inclusivity and innovation. After a 14-month search for the perfect venue, the One Bar opened earlier this year. Dimitri said that he set his sights on thriving through initiatives like local spirits nights, which a lot of bars, I'm sure you'll know, take part in, or happy hours and stuff to get people in their doors. And he also tries to thrive for sustainability efforts to stay ahead of London's evolving nightlife trends.
Well, I can definitely resonate with the trial shift and then
50,
50 and the lack of and just the lack of like training. I think that's one thing. You know, I've done a couple of hospitality jobs and they're all, you know, you get chucked in the deep end a bit and you sort of just sink and swim.
And you have the best intentions when you join, and then you go,
do.
you know, it's not a rest or to go, and nobody knows what they're doing because you're all on the trial shift.
And it's also cheaper to employ, you know, younger people. So you've got to train them. You know, if it's their first job, they've got to be trained. So, it's an interesting conversation. But finally, how have Brixton nightgoers responded to the changing habits within the industry?
Yeah, so after speaking to everyone, I do think personally there is a generational difference, and people I spoke to also mirrored that. Hamlet from the Courtesan explained how younger generations plan more to go out for special occasions, essentially, whereas older generations would go out for the sake of going out. Now, in the younger generation, such as myself, you go out for a birthday, for a Christmas do, rather than I just want to go out. I think my conversation with someone on a night out in Brixton perfectly highlights this.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I think it's good, but then I think it kind of takes the rest of the day out the next day, so that's why I don't like going too much.
Do you think people your age are going out less?
100%. I mean, I see, especially with my own friend group, like a big change. I think even this year compared to last year, my first year.
Why do you think people are going out less?
I just think it's the cost of it, especially now as a student. Like it's just so much harder to. With obviously groceries and things like that, I think there's more priorities than going out.
Do you have any ideas of how nightlife can improve?
You can't even say more student nights or lowering the prices. Obviously, that's just the way it is. I guess just having different themes. I guess for me, the problem with our nightlife is that there's only like a certain few themes. I think just different music, different types of just like area and background.
I would love to hear people's thoughts in the comments about if they enjoy going out and if they think age does have a major role in this. So if you have any opinions, please feel free to comment below. I mean, do you two enjoy going out on a night out?
I do. However, I think it's like multifactored that it's very expensive to go out, especially if there's not even any, you know, you wouldn't go out and just drink for the sake of drinking. Like you say, there has to be an event, and there's almost always pre-drinks somewhere where you go to the supermarket and you get a cheap bottle of wine because there's no way you can just last on drinks from the bar, if you like. And I also think society's getting very healthy now, which isn't a negative thing, but you know, my uncles and my dad have called me boring because they're like, you know, when I was your age, and it's just not really what people do that much anymore.
I think it's a little bit different now. And like, if you don't live in London, going out is hard. Like, okay, right, so I've got to get a taxi, got to pay for a taxi, got to go there, got to come back, and it is really expensive. So you know, if you factor in like the taxis, the drinks, then you go out, it's like a bit, you know, 100, 200 quid night out. And that's probably not even in London. Like, and then if you're going into London, you've got to get there. So I think it's just not as accessible if you don't live in London. And if you do, it's so expensive. Or you have to buy tickets, or there's a dress code. And I just think you don't have that like spontaneity anymore. You can't just be like, oh, do you know what? Let's just do this. And I think unless you live in like an area where obviously you kind of have a local and you go there, that's slightly different. But I like going out. I just would like if it's a bit easier, to be honest.
I mean, the guy I spoke to, he did highlight that like he just doesn't prioritize going out as much because he can't afford to, like you two said. And like venues can try to address these things by doing student nights or by having happy hours, maybe addressing the dress code. I've noticed a lot of venues around myself have lowered their dress code, so instead of having to wear heels, for example, you can go in.
I think it's nice on the occasion, but like not every single, like, you know, especially if you've got to traipse through London, you don't really want to wear heels. And I think also having student nights is great, but obviously if you're post uni or coming out of it, you're still not really like going to be, you know, have loads of money. So I think it's even like having like a 20 and over 21s, or like I know some clubs used to be like that. So I just think it's obviously they're trying their best, but they also need to make money. So I think it's like a bit of a double-edged sword, to be honest.
Yeah, I think it'll be very interesting to see how Brixton and London and nationwide, really,
Definitely.
how people will address these evolving challenges, especially with age being such a factor in why people might or might not go out.
Yeah.
So only time will really tell how that goes.
Definitely.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Libby. It's been fascinating to hear more about Brixton's nightlife industry, and I'm really keen to see what happens from there.
Yeah.
For more stories like this one, follow along on our socials. You can find us on X, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTubers at The Londoners News. Next up, our sports reporter Dan Mulhern will go through the latest news in the world of sport.
Well, thank you for joining us, Dan, on the sofa. So what are some of today's top sports stories?
Well, it's the January transfer window, of course, and after 2 weeks it's exploded into life. But funnily enough, the biggest story of the January window isn't even a transfer story. So Erling Haaland, as I'm sure everyone's heard, has signed a 9.5-year deal at Manchester City, in one of the longest and most lucrative contracts ever made in football. The deal is to extend his contract to 2034. It was announced this morning by Manchester City. It looks to be a great deal for the citizens, as Haaland has 16 goals in the league alone this season, and he looks well on course to challenge Salah for the Golden Boot in a season where many think he's not even been at his best. So the Norwegian striker has said he feels home in Manchester, and he's happy with how well Manchester City have treated him since he's arrived.
Well, to commit to 9.5 years, you've got to be
very well treated. Yeah.
So, are there any transfer updates around the London side?
Yes, so Crystal Palace looks set to sign Romain Esse from their rivals Millwall. The move has been reported by Fabrizio Romano and many other credited journalists, and it looks set to happen. With Crystal Palace's record with unearthing championship gems like Adam Moore and Michael Elise and Eberici Eze, it looks like it'll be a great signing for the Eagles, as well as a good move for Esse himself.
As a Palace fan, how do you think that he will fit in?
Well, as a winger, it's unlikely he'll fit straight into Palace's team, but similarly to Elise in the past, he'll be slowly brought into the lineup. He's only 19 and he'll have to compete with a very informed Ismail Assar for football. Fortunately for him, even though he was at Millwall for their cup game the other day, he isn't actually cup tied, so he will likely get his chance at Palace in their 4th round FA Cup match away to Doncaster. In other kind of business, they may also move for a centre back, because Trevor Chalobah, one of their main starters this season, has been recalled by Chelsea a couple of days ago. So that looks quite likely that that'll happen too. Meanwhile, for the other London sides, it's been relatively quiet. Arsenal have been pushing for midfielder Martin Zubimendi for a few days now, but there hasn't really been any breaking news on that front.
Thank you.
Brilliant. So moving on from football and on to tennis, what's happening on day 6 of the Australian Open, and what are the latest updates?
So firstly, Novak Djokovic is through past the round of 16 despite having an apparent illness in his match. He's chasing, of course, a record 25th major. Meanwhile, in the women's singles, 4-time major winner Naomi Osaka is out of the Australian Open after being forced to retire due to an injury. Meanwhile, London's Jack Draper has just had an absolute stormer of a match today against Alexander Vukic. Draper was booed by the Melbourne crowd as he seemingly tried to delay Vukic's serve in the 3rd set. But eventually he did come out on top in an incredible victory, which brings him past the round of 32. And on the other British player, Jacob Fearnley has also been knocked out. He's been knocked out as he was defeated by German Alexander Zverev. The big one for many, though, will be tonight as Emma Raducanu takes on Iga Swiatek in the round of 32 at 12:30 a.m. at the Rod Laver Arena.
I'll definitely be watching Raducanu. I love watching her play.
Well, fingers crossed that we can get 2 British players through to another round. But over to cricket, what's going on in the Women's Ashes?
Well, Australia stormed to an 86-run victory over England as the English couldn't deal with Alana King's bowling.
Okay, so what do England need to do to stay in the Ashes now?
Well, they need to win all the remaining Ashes to stay in it, and Australia really looks set to retain it. The moment of the match was undoubtedly Ash Gardner's incredible boundary catch, which has been referred to as one of the moments of Women's Ashes history.
Wow.
The T20 series is set to start on Monday, the 20th of January.
Fabulous. Well, moving on, in horse racing, as reported on our South West Londoners site, this season's King George VI chase winner Banbridge has entered in 3 races at the 2025 Cheltenham Festival. So, Dan, what are Banbridge's chances of a strong showing?
Well, one of the races he has an entry for is in the Cheltenham Gold Cup. He's 12-1 in the race betting for it, but he will have to defeat last year's champion Galopin Deschamps, who is vying for a hat-trick of wins.
Wow, yeah. I mean, has anyone ever won a hat-trick of Gold Cups?
Well, only one horse has actually ever achieved that, and that is Best Mate between 2002 and 2004. The festival is set to take place from the 11th to the 15th of March.
Well, thank you for taking us through the world of sport, Dan, and be sure to watch Radicani playing later, because I know me and Lydia will be.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
But next up, our reporter Chloe Chenery is looking into the Project 20,000 at the People and Place exhibition.
Today, I'm at the People and Places exhibit in North London talking to Cameron Griffin about his new Project 20,000, which has gathered a lot of attention.
I'm Cameron Griffin and I'm a designer maker from North London. So I studied product and furniture design at Chelsea College of Arts. The 20,000 project looks at bike theft in London, and it uses some of the materials that are products of the bike theft. So it collects some of the cut blocks, and I was welding them back into a few different pieces. I wanted to look at bike theft in a more playful way rather than trying to kind of solve it. I was never going to solve it, and so I wanted to kind of look at it in a playful way and make some products to kind of try and build awareness to how big the problem was of bike theft in London. So it started, I was just cycling around London and kind of, I started noticing trends of where these cut blocks were, and so I started picking them up, and so that's how it kind of started. I was just picking up the rocks from the side of the road, but then I started trying to reach out to local councils because they leave kind of notices of trying to clear up these locks when they're abandoned. So I ended up getting into contact with Brentwood Council. I've got some family out there. And so I went to their depot and they saved a bunch of locks for me and an abandoned bike as well. So I used a lot of that. But then a lot of the final piece ended up being new materials just because I still wanted to be able to use the locks and also, to create some of the shapes. The hardened steels are quite hard to manipulate in certain ways. So I just used mild steels to kind of create the shapes and really put the products out there. The title of the project being 20,000 refers to the average amount of bikes stolen or reported stolen each year in London, and so obviously probably double that is actually stolen because a lot of people just don't even bother reporting it anymore. So that's quite a scary number. It feels like cycling and looking your bike up carries this kind of risk that it's going to get stolen. It's kind of like this acceptance amongst like people that cycle that the bike might get stolen, and I think it causes kind of so much more. I think there's almost, I've been thinking about throughout the project, there's almost this kind of circular economy with stolen bikes now, because people don't want to have to spend a lot of money on their bike if it's just going to get stolen, so they kind of seek the second-hand market, and then it becomes a circular economy of bikes getting stolen and then buying a stolen bike and all this, so it kind of feels like a downward spiral. I've been thinking about possibly what the solution is, but I don't think there is one, sadly, or at least I haven't come up with it. I started it by just cutting up some of the bike blocks that I found and kind of welding them back together and finding kind of patterns or different shapes it was making. And I kind of noticed one of the first times I welded one with the pieces that kind of created a sideway for like a profile of a chair, so I was like, oh, would it be, like, kind of made me think, would it be possible to actually make furniture from this? And I didn't want to just use the material for kind of just some random purpose. It just kind of felt obvious to respond to the problem with the material. And so that's where I started looking at it in a playful way and started trying to kind of think about what I was trying to achieve from what I was making, and it's kind of, just to build awareness. And so, for example, the stool that I made is kind of responding to the question, how do I stop my bike getting stolen? I'm going to sit with it while it's locked up. And so it's kind of very on the nose, very kind of like, I guess, yeah, quite playful kind of way of looking at it. And then the different extruded locks that are creating different shapes all kind of look at how people try and steal your bike. So the long kind of one that's about a metre long is kind of imagining someone pulling on the lock, and instead of it breaking, it just kind of stretches out into this kind of like weird, slightly weird, crazy world of, I don't know, elongated, strange looking bike locks. I had a bike stolen when I was a child, but which is sad. I think that's almost more sad to have a child's bike stolen. But since that, I've only had my bike stolen, and I stupidly left them on my bike. Many different products I've got from food, looking at the memories of food. Somebody looks at the ceremonial aspects around tea and the whole traditions around tea. Looking at wine drinking. We've got woodworkers who take advantage of London plain wood and kind of really hone down on its localism in design and really kind of take advantage of the materials we have locally. We've got work from people that use offcuts, so there's an offcut series by Omid who use offcuts marbles and offcut marble and wood to create a side table and a lamp, which is really beautiful. And incense burning, who looks at kind of moods and how incense can uplift our kind of moods. We've got some really nice ceramics work. We look at Rock looks at how we can have this circular kind of ceramics almost, and she gets her own clay from Hampstead Heath and then is unfired, so she can still kind of break it down and then use it again for a new product, which is really cool. While Klim's another ceramicist looks at zero gravity and making cutlery for the International Space Station and looks at kind of all things around that. It's super interesting. Yeah, if people are interested, contact me over on Instagram. It's CameronGriffin_D. Send me a message over there, or my email's on there as well if you want to get in touch.
Well, thanks for joining us on the
Thank
sofa,
you for having me.
And also, one interesting way of addressing the growing issue of bike theft in London.
Absolutely, and I'm very happy to see that you had your helmet on. Safety first.
Safety first. So, yeah, tell us more about this project and the meaning behind it.
Okay, so yeah, the 20,000 project is a research-led design project that explores bike theft in London. And the title refers to the number of bikes on average that are reported stolen every single year in London. Even if someone spends like hundreds on the best lock in the market, they're still locking it to the same bike post as everyone else. So therefore, the chance is still there.
Yeah.
The project showcases a series of distorted bike locks, as you saw in the video, and it playfully comments on the routine dismantlement of bikes unlocked by thieves in London.
It's a creative way of addressing that issue, really.
Absolutely, yeah. So who is the leading person behind this?
So yeah, Cameron Griffin is the designer maker based in London and the creative behind the 20,000 project. His work centres on highlighting the inherent value of materials and researching the factors that affect the user's perception of an object's value. His designs often repurpose found objects to create new forms while still referencing the object's original use. So he's inspired by circular economies, he celebrates the use of found materials in his works, and ensures the finished object earnestly communicates a narrative.
Well, I mean, as I said earlier, I think it's a creative way of addressing this issue.
Yeah.
But what's actually being done about bike theft in London, this issue?
So one of the really good schemes at the moment is Stolen Ride, and it's a company that's run by cyclists themselves. So Stolen Ride began on Twitter, X, helping to locate stolen bikes through community action. So you can post a picture of your bike if it's been stolen, and hopefully you have a picture beforehand of said bike. You can upload it to Twitter at Stolen Ride and just put details or a photo, the location in which you logged it up in London, and thousands of fellow cyclists will all help out. It's a big community thing. And if there's a sighting, you normally get a direct message from someone, because sometimes obviously they're uploaded on Marketplace, people are trying to sell them off. Yeah. But Stolen Ride has worked with many areas of the industry, well connected, and is really well respected around London and the rest of the UK.
Well, there's lots of pros and cons to social media, but I think that is such a lovely way of people, especially cyclists with a common interest, coming together to, you know,
tackle
get
an
justice.
issue. Get justice for the bikes.
Absolutely. So, where do we go if we want to see this exhibition?
Okay, so Cameron's collection is at the People and Places exhibition, which is at the Haifa HQ Gallery, Unit 3 at Euston Tower. Griffin's work will also be alongside that of 13 other emerging artists. So we've got things such as transformative repurposing of coffee sacks, reimagining Polish design history through the lens of post-war scarcity and resilience, the deep emotional connections we form with food, and unfired London clay as a renewable and recyclable material for dynamic and transistent designs. And after looking at all these things myself, I thought they're really good. So definitely worth looking at.
Definitely, I'm going to look that up after this.
That's incredible. And
Yeah.
there's definitely a link between the story you researched and your story here today about repurposing and things like that. And it's lovely that it comes out in a creative way.
Yeah, I think sometimes that's the best way.
Absolutely.
A creative way to tackle a serious and growing issue. So thank you very much, Chloe. It was a pleasure having you. But now, in the world of photojournalism, Ollie Loveland-Jones will take us through a local photojournalism course which takes place in London.
To the session from an over 50s course hosted by Photojournalism Hub. I spoke to 3 individuals who partook in the activities, which help aspiring photographers and journalists turn visual imagery into real and engaging stories.
I'm Cinzia D'Ambrosi, and I'm the founder and the director of the Photojournalism Hub, which is a community interest company based in London, and we've been working since 2018. To begin with as a constituted group, and then in 2021 we became a community interest company. So actually I am a documentary photographer and photojournalist, and I've been working on local stories as well as national and international stories, collaborating with different organizations, mostly charities and NGOs and so forth. Very much passionate about the power of documentary photography and visual narrative to impact and make changes. And I've been working also quite a lot on local stories, and I guess that's where it all started, because all the local stories were very much about things quite sad actually: poverty, homelessness, and the impact of women and children with insecure housing and also food banks and so forth. And from that I thought, I was doing quite a lot of other things with, again, empowering local groups with photography workshops, very, very, very low key at the beginning. And then I thought, wow, I would like to maybe make a structure to it and create a little bit more of a constituted type group.
Avril Goodbye, and I wanted to learn photography because I couldn't even, holding a camera, I didn't even know the on and on switch, on off switch or anything. And I started work with Cynthia and a group at the Nubian Life Centre in West 12. And we've moved on to doing different projects, me and the community, what home means to me, and a lovely group. I haven't actually furthered on with a lot of photography skills, but I've certainly enjoyed arranging the projects. And at the moment I'm doing a project on a pictorial family tree with writing as well, and that's what I'm working on at the moment.
Hi, I'm Nuri. I co-facilitate the digital support workshops. I also write the newsletter for the organization and try to get us involved as much as I can. I work with the Photojournalism Hub, currently co-facilitating those digital support workshops, and it really just goes to show how many things this organization is doing. Because as Cinzia was teaching photography, she identified this gap in the fact that some support is needed for people to help with editing, to help with sending pictures, to help maybe even with access to computers, to be able to send those pictures for when we are doing the magazine. And currently we are working on everybody editing the magazine together. So it was really wonderful to have those 2 hours a week where people just come in and maybe ask a query about their work, or ask Cinzia about photography, or ask me about maybe what's the best format to send a picture in so that it doesn't lose on quality when we put it into magazine. And we have now graduated to everybody who is participating in the next feature of the magazine actually editing their own work and being part of this very stressful but quite an interesting editorial process, and actually having a go at that. So that was pretty good. But as with any charity, there's always a question of funding, so we try to do what we can, and we try to work with other organizations in the community, and so far it seems to create a very good grassroots connection, I feel like. And you can see it in all the festivals photojournalism hub students participated in. Like there was the Great Exhibition Road Festival at the Science Museum, where people would put together magazines for a while, and then their best work would just go into representing communities in Southwest London and really everywhere. I did a project about like migration in Kent, to be honest. So it was just about everywhere, people, places, but also made by people locally, talking about any issues there, reporting from protests, reporting from food banks, just anything that's close to anybody who participates.
So thanks for joining us on the sofa, Ollie. What an interesting and another creative story, which is such a treat. So why don't you explain what actually photojournalism is?
So it's essentially the practice of telling stories through visual imagery, telling stories through photographs. Several examples of famous photojournalists include Margaret Burke-White and Henry Cartier-Bresson, among many more. So obviously it's a huge and impactful art, because obviously, you know, with stories, they often go hand in hand with photos. You know, they wouldn't be as impactful without the visual imagery that comes alongside it. So obviously they try and create good human interest stories through the use of photography. And yeah, I think so.
Photos can be very emotive, and they definitely can carry a story.
It just speaks 1,000 words, as they say. So moving on, what kind of events are hosted by Photojournalism London?
So they host various courses and exhibitions. So the one I attended for this video was for people aged 50 and over. Another one of their courses was for people aged 16 to 25. That's their youth course. Yeah, so they do various different things, like different pieces of work. And well, one of the exhibitions you would have seen from the final interview was the Great Exhibition Road at the Science Museum, and so they took part in that, and they just ultimately they do various things like training, producing work, publishing, and yeah.
Wow, so they really assist in bringing together photographers and helping them tell stories, which is amazing.
And a range of ages as well.
Yeah, when you said that, I thought that's incredible, because you don't really hear about clubs for people 50 and over, so that's really positive. And a chance to be creative as well. So you mentioned that they had an exhibition. What are some examples of work they've done?
So a lot of the work they do include making magazines and producing portfolios of work. If you go on their website, there's loads of different sort of PDFs and magazines that you can see online, that are published online, that people in their courses have made. So often the students have to take part in like a presentation at the end, so they'll produce all their work and they'll edit and they'll produce a presentation at the end. Other stuff they do include like editing magazines together as like a group project. So yeah, they've also focused on various issues such as immigration, winter fuel payment, cost of living crisis, pollution. They've also done stuff like attend protests and events to take photos of those. So yeah, they do a lot of work.
Very thought-provoking topics, 100%.
Yeah, and I do think things like protests and those kind of more, I guess, big like political moments as well, that photos are needed. You know, there is only so much you can explain with words. Sometimes the photo will say what you need it to say more simply. Kind of along that line then, what kind of motives lie behind the work that they do?
So if you look on their website, they have a mission statement which basically details out what their values are, what their philosophy is, And so they're motivated by calls for social justice and empowering marginalized communities. So they also wish to uphold human rights. And of course, this is reflected in the work they do. They help raise awareness, create human interest stories, public interest stories, and ultimately bring about awareness and change on various issues, so like, for example, immigration, marginalized communities. And that's definitely reflected in the work and photography that they do.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's
Might have to
incredible.
attend a course. Sign me
Definitely.
up, Ollie.
Definitely want to have a look at those photographs. They sound very thought-provoking. But now over to the world of entertainment. Ollie, you will also be bringing us up to speed. So what's new?
So in the world of cinema, screen fans are mourning the death of the acting legend Dame Joan Plowright, who made enormous contributions to the screens and stages of many audiences. She passed away yesterday, surrounded by her family. Plowright was best known for acting in classics including Enchanted April, and also starring in plays such as Equus and A Taste of Honey.
Amazing.
And also, what else is currently trending in the world of entertainment?
So, in some more lighter news, Nintendo have announced their latest console. It came weeks after rumours and sort of leaks all circulated on social media. So yeah, the iconic Japanese gaming company broke their silence with a video announcing it. It will be named Nintendo Switch 2. So it will quite strongly resemble the original Switch, but will have a larger screen and various other features, and because it's new, it will obviously be more high-tech, able to run more games, and yeah.
Good news for the gamers out there, really.
Absolutely, yeah, Nintendo fans. I definitely had a Wii.
I had a blue one when I was younger.
Mine was white.
It was like a nice baby blue, and I have fond memories. So I'm glad for the newer version coming out.
Yeah.
What about in the world of radio? Is there any news there?
So there's some good news too. Heart presenter Jamie Theakston has revealed he is now cancer-free. So he announced on Heart Breakfast Radio, where he presents, that his laryngeal cancer, which doctors told him may lead to him losing his voice completely, has been cured. So
ironic for
that's incredibly poignant for the work that he does. So that's amazing news. Glad to hear he's recovered. So lastly, what TikTok baker has been taking up the minds of celebrity fans recently?
So an amateur baker has gone viral for his the publication online of the cakes he makes for celebrity clients. So Claudia Winkleman, who's obviously one of his clients, posted on her Instagram a cake made for her by baker Keith Scouvel. He spoke to the BBC saying that, you know, if something makes you smile, don't keep it to yourself, share it. And I'm not sure if that's typically something that makes people smile. It's a bit scary, but ultimately it's an amusing story, quite a wholesome one. And
and a nice one to end on as well, I think.
Absolutely, and I'll definitely be getting one of your face for your birthday, Liz.
Well, yeah. We'll see how that goes. If it looks anything like that, I'm not sure I'll be very happy about it. But thank you very much, Ollie, for bringing us all the news and entertainment. That's all in that section for today. Well, unfortunately, that's all we have time for today.
Thank you to all our reporters for joining us, and tune in next time for more of the best stories London has to offer. I'm Lydia Young.
And I'm Luci Bell, and thank you for watching the Londoners News.
Don't forget to check out our socials linked on the screen below.